In May 2025, attackers gained unrestricted access to clueless systems, and this compromised the personal data, interview transcripts, and screen recordings of 83,000 users. It was later discovered that the developers had inadvertently left the admin passwords exposed in a public GitHub repository. Now, around the same time, another vulnerability was discovered, and that one allowed the app to be exploited like a malware, continuously snapping the screen of unsuspecting users. So, two critical vulnerabilities within the same period on the same app. Similarly, in December 2025, oversights allowed autonomous AI agents to run code directly on users' machines without validating or isolating what the code could do. This exposed its 1 million users to multiple varying levels of attack. And lastly, on April 20th, 2026, a security researcher revealed that a broken object-level authorization vulnerability, also known as BOLA, allowed anyone with a free Lovable account to view users' source code, internal chat history, and active database credentials in just 5 API calls. Now, these three apps all have two things in common. First of all, their teams heavily employ AI in the development of their software. And secondly, they've all suffered vulnerabilities as a result. They code fast and ship fast, and that is exactly where the problem begins. But for you to understand it, you need to understand two things. First of all, how software development worked before AI, and secondly, how AI builds apps versus how experienced developers build apps. You see, before AI, junior and mid-level developers would write code and open pull requests that had to be reviewed by a senior developer before even a single line of code ever touched the server. This code review process dramatically reduced the amount of bugs that reached users and almost eliminated entire categories of vulnerabilities. It also forced junior developers to think carefully about edge cases and the unintended side effects of their code. But with the advent of AI, we are all shipping more code that any developer can reasonably review in a good time. The code some developers now produce in 2 days is what would have taken a whole team 30 days to produce before AI. Now, that sounds like a win, and in many ways it actually is, but AI doesn't think about code the same way humans do. You see, humans try to anticipate the edge cases, to think about who might misuse a feature and consider what could go wrong in that situation. AI, on the other hand, focuses solely on delivering exactly what it was asked to build, nothing more. Now, understanding this simple difference can be the deciding factor between an app that is safe for users and one that becomes the next security headline. The second thing you need to understand is how AI builds versus how experienced developers build. Experienced developers think in 3 layers. First, the front end, which is the part that users see and interact with, whether it's a website, a mobile app, or a desktop app. And then the second part is the backend, which is the brains of the operation, right? Where the logic lives, where your app talks to the database. And the third layer is the database itself, where all the data is stored. Now, just before the AI era, a set of companies emerged with a different philosophy. Tools like Firebase and Supabase promoted the idea that you don't really need a backend at all. You can just connect your front end directly to the database. And while this actually makes building faster and easier, it introduces some subtle and very serious risks. Misconfigurations, exposed API keys, and flawed access control rules in this setup have led to some of the most damaging breaches we've seen in recent years. For example, the Lovable incident is a perfect example of this exact situation. So even though your development time is shorter today than it used to be, reviewing and validating AI-generated code now needs to take significantly more time than most teams currently allocate to it. Your quality assurance process has to be detailed and uncompromising. So if you need help with this, you can reach out to me. My team and I work with founders to do exactly that. And I'm also building a dedicated security tool to help VI coders catch these issues earlier in the process. Now, beyond having a solid QA process, there are 3 things you can do right now during development to make sure your app is meaningfully safer. And the first thing you can do is pay close attention to the parts of your app that actually handle user data and teammates data. These are almost always where attackers focus because the potential reward is highest and the attack surface tends to be the widest. Secondly, you can run an OAuth top 10 check on your app. The OAuth top 10 is a well-maintained list of most critical and commonly exploited web security vulnerabilities. Now, if your app is keying against that list, you've already closed the door to a majority of what gets exploited in the wild. And lastly, and this one is actually very underrated, ask AI how it would attack your app if it were a malicious user. You'll be surprised at how useful the answer is. It will surface loopholes you didn't consider, and you can then immediately ask it to help you fix them. So if you're by coding your app, go ahead, build fast, but build like someone is trying to break in, because someone is actually trying to break in.